Hey, everybody. Hope you're having a fantastic day. I know I am. These presentations and roundtable conversations this weekend, as always, have got my heart racing and my blood pumping. So glad to be here. Thank you all so much for hanging this weekend. My name is Rhonda Nicole. It's great to see so many familiar faces in the chat, although I can't see your faces, of course. I am a Los Angeles-based singer-songwriter, music journalist, and social and digital media marketer. And I am here today to share with you, echoing like a volcano, the fantastic love story that is The Screams of Passion. In this gorgeously poetic masterpiece, one of the finest from his oeuvre, Prince entices us to embark on the romantic journey of a lifetime in the song The Screams of Passion. Animated by the palpable chemistry between the family's lead vocalists, St. Paul Peterson and Susannah Melvoin, the third track from the band's eponymous debut blends Prince's signature funk with sumptuous lyrics that lead us down the long, twisting corridors of intimacy on the way to sensual ecstasy. Come, follow me and explore the love, lust, longing, and lingering lusciousness as we celebrate 40 years of this decadent family affair. So, a little bit about 1985. For me, it reigns as one of the most pivotal years in my upbringing. I entered the world of double digits. I turned 10, something that my eldest sister, Dawn, tried her best to freak me out about the day before my birthday. My parents divorced, and my transition from dreamy-eyed, Michael Jackson fangirl to not quite sure what he's talking about, but I like this song, Prince devotee, continued, much to my parents' chagrin. Between waiting anxiously to see the not yet christened King of Pop's latest videos on MTV and making up cheeky routines to New Edition's Cool It Now with my friend Alethea, not to mention trying to convince any adult who had money to please buy me one of those floofy petticoats that Madonna had made famous by writhing around in the Like a Virgin video, Prince's music had taken firm root in my soul. I could still gleefully sing along to 5 Stars, Let Me Be the One, and even Donna Summer, She Works Hard for the Money. But those songs and artists were permanently displaced when Prince and his cavalcade of related artists became the center of my musical world. And so it would be that in a beautifully strange way, I found home when I discovered the family's self-titled Paisley Park debut in my dad's stereo case. This is my daddy. Now, how and why my dad came to buy this album remains a bit of a mystery. I'd already gotten the first glimpse of the family via BET's Video Soul, thanks to their video, The Screams of Passion. So I knew that they were the latest issue from Paisley Park's roster. I also knew my dad had a major crush on Sheila E, whom he declared could possibly be my new stepmother. So he'd purchased her Romance 1600 LP and taken me to see Crush Groove, all in reverence to his girlfriend in his head. But Sheila E wasn't a member of the family, so I couldn't quite make out why he'd picked up their record. When I finally asked him about it, his response was something along the lines of, "Oh, it looked interesting." So at the end of that weekend, I slid that record into my bag, took it back to my mom's house, and in retrospect, it's highly possible that my dad never got to listen to the album. Rising from the ashes of the Times dissolution, the family was composed of former Time members St. Paul Peterson, Jellybean Johnson, and Jerome Benton, and introduced us to sax man Eric Leeds and vocalist Susannah Melvoin, who by that point had been a longtime Prince collaborator and, of course, romantic partner, as we all know. Where the Time delivered more assertive, undeniably masculine sexuality as an extension of Prince's own musical persona, the family added a sweet measure of sensuality to the mix without losing the funk. The Time balanced Prince's often on-the-nose sexual lyrical content with humor, evoking a vibe wedged somewhere between the frat house and the Playboy Mansion. The family, though, the emphasis seemed to not be so much on the payoff, but everything leading up to it. The band members clad in silk pajamas and lounging around an ornately decorated house in the album's cover art gave the impression that behind each door of the house, something magical awaited. To the dismay of a growing legion of fans, the family was over almost as quickly as it began. After one album and one live performance, the band broke up and its members dispersed. In keeping with the Hollywood clamor of the album's photography evokes, the thwarted love affair amounts to what one of my film professors used to refer to as the unfinished F. I'm not going to say the word, a vulgar term he applied to the cinematic concept of sex that is implied but not viewed on screen. For all the promise of the family as a band and their album, and especially their breakout single, what should have been fireworks was little more than a spark. So that despite the divorce that separated us in a manner of speaking, the perfect R&B love songs that comprise the family and our family were made to last forever, and the screams of passion remains the jewel in the family's crown. Languid and ridiculously sexy, St. Paul and Susannah's seductive serenade is classic mid-80s Prince in every way, from the gorgeous Claire Fisher string arrangement to the Lindrum. St. Paul and Susannah sing in unison, describing a gentle autumn breeze that blows whenever we be lying in my bed, and the scene unfolds in such a way that you almost wonder if it's actually a vignette from a Disney film, with curtains dancing a minuet and leaves falling and a robin singing a masterpiece that lives and dies unheard. But then there are the screams, and we're reminded that this room in the house is for grown folks only. A most F deluxe R&B tune, The Screams of Passion remains the band's most notable hit. Paul's and Susannah's voices layered atop one another evoke the feeling of being in your lover's arms, enveloped in sheets and blankets and perhaps the faintest flicker of candles burning slowly to the wick. The Screams of Passion is the setup for the ultimate payoff. And Paul and Susannah sing in unison, parting ways briefly here and there in their melodious ad-libs. It's the irresistible dance, the give and take intended to lead to extraordinary pleasure. Back and forth, the raging seas of lust. I want you madly, can't you tell? Can't you tell? Can't you tell? The duo's vocal delivery is equal parts soulful and sultry, measured and controlled, until a wild scream towards the end of the song is met with a hushed shh, not so loud, a sound produced by two in love, no doubt. The video for The Screams of Passion, which we've all seen a dozen times, opens with strings set against a boudoir scene with Susannah in bed peeking over the cover of a Life magazine. It's an iconic scene, actually. It jumps abruptly to waves crashing, and then again, Susannah in bed, and finally to St. Paul, Susannah, Eric Leeds, Jelly Bean, and Jerome on the beach, decked out in pajamas. We see here Jerome kind of conducting an orchestra, which again, makes no sense, but it makes perfect sense in the context of this incredible song. There it is again. All right. So while the positioning of the band members with instruments on a beach is a bit cheesy, it's the first time we see the family as a cohesive unit, and it works. Having two white lead vocalists front and center didn't feel like such a stretch for an R&B funk band, especially one coming out of Minneapolis in that era. And I know that that was something that came up during the roundtable earlier today. So I'm glad that we had a chance to touch on it as well in that part of the conversation. But, given the time, if you'd seen Purple Rain or any of the music videos associated with the soundtrack and artists in the film, the family probably seemed familiar, even if you weren't necessarily diehard Purple. The Screams of Passion video got minor play on MTV, but fared better on BET's Video Soul. So shout out to Donnie Simpson. Despite having minimal creative input on the overall composition and recording of The Screams of Passion, Jerome, Jelly Bean, and Miko Weaver are credited on the song, but didn't actually write or perform it. The family made the song their own, and It Rains is their biggest hit. The single made it to number 63 on the Billboard Hot 100, number 9 on the Billboard Black chart, and number 10 on the Billboard Hot Dance Disco Club Play chart. The Screams of Passion held its position in the top 10 on the R&B charts in the US for 16 weeks. And during the same time, you had heat from Prince and the Revolution, of course, Jesse Johnson, Tamara and the Scene, the Jets, Andre Simone, all blazing the R&B charts and airwaves. And I point this out because I think it's easy to cast the family aside as just another failed Prince side project, or one that only matters to a certain segment of the Prince fandom. But in 1985, the landscape was wildly different than it is today on so many fronts, musically and culturally. And to dismiss this band and how it feeds into the larger Paisley Park legacy is short-sighted at minimum. As saturated as radio and especially Black radio and music television were in the mid 80s with Prince, Prince adjacent, and Minneapolis music, the Screams of Passion was unlike anything else that emerged at the time. The Screams of Passion introduced the family as more than just a flash in the pan Prince side project. They were the band to watch, albeit a regrettably short lived one. And, one might wager that had the band not been faced with some of the issues that they had to contend with, the lack of support, the not so great pay, the iffy contracts, and so forth, they could have easily experienced the same level of success as Sheila E in the time. But the family that plays together stays together. And lucky for us, the family reemerged with new music 26 years after their inaugural offering. In 2011, the band formerly known as The Family became F Deluxe and released their first album of original material, Gaslight. With Gaslight being the band's first time creating, writing, and recording together without Prince's creative input, the collection brims with his influence, especially on the track Over the Canyon. Intentionally or not, the song seems to make subtle reference to the Screams of Passion with lyrics such as, "Come go with me, I need your arms to hold me tight. And in the backyard where we kissed for hours and hours and hours, I found us again in the green over the canyon." The track feels as though it picks up where its predecessor left off, but with maturity and insight of life lived, time passed, and love lost and reclaimed. To make the gift of rebirth even sweeter, F Deluxe took their show on the road and delivered a marvelous live album, Live and Tight as a Funk Fiends fix, featuring fan favorites from the family and songs from the new projects. The Screams of Passion was, of course, part of these live shows, and perhaps you'll get to see this little clip. This is a clip of St. Paul and Susannah with St. Paul's Minneapolis Funk All-Stars at Vibrato in Los Angeles in 2020. Right before the world shut down. So when we talk about classic jams, The Family's The Screams of Passion stands the test of time. It's melodramatic, it's theatrical, and it's an absolutely sensory delight. These days, folks talk about, "If the love don't feel like 90s R&B, I don't want it." But as for me and my house, I want it to feel and sound as lush and vibrant and urgent as The Screams of Passion. We've heard the refrain far too frequently that R&B is dead. And by my estimation, I believe that one of the reasons some may feel this way has to do with what's perceived as what's missing in the genre today. Prince was exceptionally gifted as a songwriter, and this especially came through in his love songs. And while he could certainly turn a phrase that would make your mama and the PMRC blush, he knew how to get at the heart of the matter. The Screams of Passion puts this skill on full display, centering intimacy, connection, and romance, the secret ingredients that seem to be overlooked in more recent musical offerings. And I think it's these elements that make the Screams of Passion timeless and so dearly beloved by 80s R&B fans and Deep Purple fam alike. As this crucial band celebrates the 40th anniversary of their critically acclaimed album, the original members keep Minneapolis sound alive with their numerous musical projects. They're joining Candy Dulfer and Shelby J for a string of shows in Europe this summer, and at a recent performance in Los Angeles, St. Paul hinted that the family would be hitting the road, or hitting the stage soon at least, in LA. Jerome included. And just this week, Paisley Park revealed that the band would be on hand for this year's celebration in June.